Well, you've probably been watching the talk I've just given, Dance with the Devil. You're probably wondering a little bit about my background, how I came to be a specialist in talking about gang music, rap, violence, youth culture. Well, what you probably see around you right now as you're watching this DVD at home in the comfort, this is my local area. This is where I grew up as a youth. I've lived here since literally the age of about 3.5. This is the Clapton Park estate, sometimes called Gilpin Square, which is where we're going to go to soon. At the moment now, the area's on the revival. It's not the way it used to be. Unfortunately, for many years before urban regeneration that was instigated by the government, and now particularly with the Olympics coming here, we're beginning to see urban regeneration. But before that, Hackney was like a lot of typical areas in London, throughout the rest of Britain. It was crime-ridden, there was drugs, there was gang violence. And what we're going to go to now is I'm going to show you my particular area where a lot of the young youth used to hang out. I had a lot of friends around here when I was growing up. I'll let you know what's happened to some of those people as I did grow up. Some of them have made a positive effect in their life. Others, unfortunately, have gone the way a lot of people have gone in this society. They've taken the road of drugs. They've been misled, unfortunately, by a very powerful media system that's led them to believe that drugs, gangs and violence is the only way to make money rather than getting an education. So I think what we're doing now, we're heading to Gilpin Square, and I'll give you a little bit more of a rundown. Well, this is Gilpin Square, what I was talking about. Depending what side of the media fence you're on, you either call it the square or Gilpin Square. This is essentially where I grew up. This is where my mum used to take me. This is where the groceries were bought. And for a lot of people, unfortunately, this was their university of life. This was their university of crime. There was a lot of dodgy dealings go on, and unfortunately, for a lot of people, they didn't always make it out of here. They didn't always make it out of Gilpin Square. I was one of those fortunate people. I had a good mum that she spent her time with me, had a lot of trust in me, tried to help me, and ultimately I converted to Islam. That brought me out of a lot of the rubbish I was in. But a lot of the kids that you see here, it's not really much difference from when I was younger. The only difference really these days is the style of dress. But really, we find in areas a lot like this is the youth problem is to do with there's nothing for them to do. There's no community centres, or if there are community centres, they're only open maybe 1 or 2 days a week. So obviously the kids don't have anything there that they can do on a regular basis. So, and unfortunately, being an area that's very economically deprived, you find that many of the kids here, they don't have fathers around. So what you're going to find is, because there isn't a strong role model in the house, then the next role model automatically becomes who's available. And unfortunately, for a lot of these kids that are not media savvy, that don't understand that the way that the media works, they get fooled into believing that the next role model, really, that to them, who should be followed is the guy on the television. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, that's the grime rappers, that's the gangster rappers. So they look to them. And because they don't really have any kind of educational background behind them, because a lot of them become disenfranchised by the education system, then the only way that they seemingly can make money and make money successfully is to get involved in the drugs industry or to get involved in some type of fraud. So literally, this is what happens here. So you will see the kids hanging around, but unfortunately, one of the things that a lot of the society doesn't take into consideration is how these kids got there. These are issues that need to be addressed. But a lot of the things the kids don't understand is when they're watching Channel U and MTV Base and all of these other programs, is that a lot of the rappers who appear on there are not really who they perceive to be. You find a lot of them, through my own investigation, are university educated. These guys are very media savvy. They understand that by getting involved in the rap industry is the quickest way they can make money. So it's not even a case of they're really gangsters, they're really players, they're really hoods. It's a case of they're gangsters in a sense that they fooled the kids into buying their records, into making believe that they're gangsters, so they buy into the image. But they never look at you of the effects of what happens when a lot of these kids get involved in the guns, in the crime, the violence. I mean, when I was a youth, you know, the worst that could happen is you get in a fist fight, and in the generation after that, it was maybe they was pulling a knife on someone. Today, we know that they're pulling guns on each other, and I think this is a direct correlation, you know, that we have to start looking at the degree of increasing violence in society. And I think it's unfair just to continuously look at the gangster rappers, because I think we have to look at mainstream films that justify violence, that justify the means and ability to make money through violence. So, for example, I have friends I grew up with. I have one of my friends, he was a Muslim. I wasn't a Muslim at the time. He got involved in some bad people. Next thing I heard, that he was doing life imprisonment because he'd actually gone and shot someone in a jewellery robbery that had gone wrong. He's doing life. Another guy I knew, he got involved with Jamaican gangsters. He got involved with Yardis. One day they caught up to him, blew his face off while he was sitting in his car. And that's just many of my friends I know. If I don't have friends that are dead, I've had friends that have definitely spent time in prison. And one of the things that these rappers, they kind of glamorize the prison life. I know when I was a youth, I remember one very video that was very reminded me, and that was a video by the rapper Ice Cube that kind of showed the prison life and what happened in prison, and that, you know, if you're tough enough and hard enough, that you can be the don and you can run the prison. But reality, through the experience I've gained working as an Islamic chaplain in a large prominent London prison, that's not the reality. You're gonna find that a lot of these guys, when they get in prison, a lot of them on the street, they look tough, they look rough, but when they get inside, they cry like babies. Because you have to understand that when you go into prison, it's a different type of life. You're going in there, you're stripped of your identity, you're stripped of your name, you become a number, you become a cell, and in your cell you have to share that with another guy, so there's no privacy between the two of you. When you want to urinate, the guy is there standing watching you because your toilet is in your cell. So it's not like you're at home and you're rolling out of a comfortable bed. That doesn't happen in prison. And you're going to find that when you get into prison, there are real people in there who have been involved in maybe more violent things, that have been involved in more crime than you, and you're going to find that they're a hell of a lot tougher than you. So I find sometimes that when I meet guys on the initial night when they first get into prison, they're crying like babies. You know, they're missing their mum. You know, it's hard to believe, but, you know, I've sat in on conversations with these guys, you know, and they're saying they can't take it no more. They're cracking up, they're going mad. And this is what they're not talking about when you're watching the gangster rap videos and the grime videos, is the reality of prison life. Prison life as well is violent. I've seen an instance where one of the prisoners attacked another prisoner and nobody saw it. And when the guards come to investigate the issue, because you have a code of silence in the prison system, it's not like you can maybe have some kind of retribution through the legal system. That's not going to happen. The retribution that goes on in the prison system is you take it upon yourself. And people have died in prison. You look at the statistics of the American prison system, a lot of guys have gone in there and they give them what's called a $1.50, which is a slash right across the face. And this is the reality. So this is what happens with a lot of guys, you know, that they think they're running their local street corner, but they're not, because that street corner, you know, doesn't even really belong to them. It belongs to the council. It's kind of a make-believe. And all of these rappers are make-believe. I mean, we're talking about someone like Dr. Dre that's talking his lyrics about that he's still DRE, still got guns when he needs them. Yet my man back in 1985 was dressing like a woman in a sequin skirt. And this is what they're not told. So unfortunately, a lot of these youth, you know, I kind of like to terminalize it, you know, they're living in the matrix. They're living in a fantasy world. And that's what happens. And this is the reality. This is where it stems from. But it doesn't have to be like that. It's a case of urban regeneration and a reality. You know, it's all very well to attack the environment these people are coming from, but you have to understand a lot of these rap records are being put out by multimedia industrial companies. the Time Warners and other companies like that. So if you really want to blame anyone, you have to start blaming the producers for fooling these children into falling for a fantasy that doesn't even exist. So, you know, like I say, this is Gilpin Square. This is where I grew up, and like I say, there was a lot of no goodness that I got into, but you know, all praise is due to God, all praise is due to Allah. I came out of that, and you know, these are just some of my issues. Like I say, friends of mine are dead, friends of mine have been in prison, friends of mine are probably going to go back in prison again. This is the sad fact, you know. And if anything, you know, to leave the youth with this kind of message is then for them to understand, you know, that you're getting involved in a fantasy that's of no benefit to you. The only benefit is to the rapper whose songs you're buying, because he's getting richer, where you're staying poorer. And then you're looking at him, you're looking at the money that he's made, and you're thinking, yeah, let me go and do a little thing like that, and I'm going to end up like that. You ever heard of a rich villain? The only rich villain I ever met was the Bush family in the White House, but that's another topic for another subject. But putting all laughter to one side, you know, the rappers are living good off a fantasy, and unfortunately the youth are falling foul to that. And I would tell them, you know, prison is not a nice life. You lose your name, you lose your identity, you lose your dignity. And that's the reality. You go in there, you can come out, and it ain't fun to go back in again, because sooner or later, it's going to finish you. Sooner or later, you're going to meet someone bigger or badder than you, and you ain't going to be able to push them around, roll around, and they're going to take care of you. That's what happened to my friend. He got involved with yardies. Thought he could be the big man. Got his face blown off. So this is Clapton Park. This is my yard. This is where I grew up. But, you know, they say, you know, you may grow up in the ghetto, but it doesn't necessitate that the ghetto has to grow up in you. You know? And the advice, think seriously about the next action you're going to take. Because, you know, in 2007 alone, over 20 young men and women are dead. For what? Dead for nothing. Dead from a fantasy. That's the saddest thing. They didn't even die for anything substantial. They didn't die for rights. They didn't die to do the good thing. They died over a fantasy. And that's sad. That's sad.